Britney Spears' conservatorship case is back in court Wednesday. The pop icon did not attend the hearing as she pushes to remove her father's control of her life. This afternoon, supporters held a Free Britney rally at the Lincoln Memorial in Washington. They want lawmakers to reform the country's guardianship laws. In the previous hearing, Spears revealed she feels enslaved by her conservatorship. She testified, quote, "I'm not happy. I can't sleep. I'm so angry. It's insane. And I'm depressed. I cry every day." Spears claims she has not been allowed to remove her IUD when she wanted to get pregnant. She also says she was forced to take lithium used to treat bipolar disorder when she refused to perform. For more on all of this, I want to bring in Victoria Colliver. She covers California healthcare policy for Politico. Victoria, welcome. Thanks very much for being with us. There is so much interest in this case for Britney Spears. What has happened since Britney Spears' late June conservatorship hearing?
Quite honestly, I think a lot of people didn't really know much about conservatorship before Britney Spears came on the scene, and her testimony in June, I think, was rather shocking to most people. They found like she could not have some basic control over her life, her reproductive life, ability to make decisions, get married, things like that. And meanwhile, this is a woman who has been raising 2 kids and has done several world tours and is making money for a lot of people around her. I think a lot of the prevailing thought is here's this woman who seems fairly capable but has been deemed incapacitated by the court so far. And that is quite a surprise for most people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just hearing what it was that she felt, and what she's experienced, she says, was really eye-opening for a lot of people. Well, Britney Spears' father, Jamie, has been in control of her $60 million fortune for over a decade. Is there something unique to California law that allows this?
I'm not sure if it's actually unique to California law, but what we have here is this 2-track system. And one track, people are put in conservatorship if they have a severe mental health or substance abuse issue that triggers the conservatorship and can't maintain their faculties enough to control their lives. And the second track is known as probate. And that really involves people who have severe developmental disabilities or dementia or something like that, long-term brain disorder. Then that's what Britney Spears is in now. She seems to have moved from one to the other. And I think the difficult thing about that track is that it's very difficult to get out of this conservatorship. It can go on indefinitely. And Britney Spears also didn't have information about, that she could actually petition the court to get out of it, or the idea that she can actually select her own attorney.
Right, and so this information that wasn't available to her obviously has affected her case here moving forward. Well, Spears' father is also fighting against paying for increased security for her co-conservator. Why does Jody Montgomery want more security?
Well, she's saying that she has been under threats and harassment since she took over in 2019, that role as a temporary. And Mr. Spears' contention is that he's also been under threat, and he obviously doesn't want to have her protection paid for out of his daughter's estate, which is obviously millions. It has, interesting, like the New Yorker piece recently revealed, like the law firm has made like half, the lawyer, the attorney representing Britney Spears has made like $500,000 representing her. Obviously, she's become somewhat of a cash cow to a lot of people around her in this conservatorship arrangement.
Well, recent court documents revealed that Spears' father has spent over $2 million in legal fees to remain as her conservator. He's using her money to fight against her stated wishes. Is it clear under what circumstances someone's conservatorship could end or even become less restrictive?
I think that's something that we'll see as this plays out in the courts. Once again, it is very difficult to get out of conservatorship situations. In California, about in 2006, there was an effort to try to reform our conservatorship laws, but that got caught in it wasn't funded during the Great Recession, and things have gotten worse since then. Since then, there's been some efforts to reform our laws, essentially give people more rights. There's a bill right now going through the legislature that would allow it would require attorneys to be more transparent about their fees and give family members more ability to investigate allegations of abuse. And that's going through right now. But there was another piece of legislation that would look at allowing people to select their attorneys. That did not advance this year, but will probably be taken up next year again, in large part due to the Free Britney movement and the attention she has drawn to this issue.
So, this potential legislative action, what does it look like as far as support? Because this is a case that has attracted attention from both Republican and Democratic lawmakers. Exactly.
I really do think that this case has propelled this into the limelight. Once again, Britney Spears is not a typical person who's conserved. A lot of people who are in these situations don't have the money or, even real reasons for other people to want to conserve them and take advantage of them. She has a lot of money to be taken advantage of, let's put it that way. But what it does do is makes people feel if someone like Britney Spears with her resources and her people can't kind of navigate her way through this system, what hope is there for the rest of us?
Right. So many people are paying such close attention to this case. Victoria Colliver for us. Victoria, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.